The forest held its breath. It was as if the very trees and the earth beneath them were waiting, anticipating something inevitable. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of dread that seemed to seep into every crevice and hollow. The mist swirled around the trunks of ancient trees, creating ghostly shapes that danced in the periphery of vision, only to vanish when looked at directly. A silence, heavy and watchful, pressed down on everything. It was the kind of silence that made the ears ring, a silence so profound that it seemed to amplify the slightest sound. The forest was alive, but it was a life that moved in shadows and whispers. The creatures of the night, the owls, the wolves, and the unseen things that slithered and crawled, all seemed to be holding their breath as well. It knew the secrets, the ancient sins buried beneath layers of fallen leaves and time. The forest was old, older than memory, and it had seen things that no living creature could comprehend. The ground was littered with the detritus of centuries, a carpet of decaying leaves and broken branches that hid the bones of the past. Every step taken in this place was a step into history, a history written in blood and shadow. It knew the hunter was never alone. He moved through the forest with the confidence of one who had spent a lifetime in its embrace. But even he could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. The forest had eyes that saw everything, eyes that judged and remembered. The hunter was a part of this place, but he was also an intruder, a trespasser in a world that did not belong to him. Something stalked him, something ancient and hungry for vengeance. It moved with a grace and silence that belied its size, a shadow among shadows, a predator in a land of prey. The hunter could sense it, a presence that was both familiar and alien, a force of nature that had been wronged and was now seeking retribution. He could feel its breath on the back of his neck, a cold, clammy sensation that sent chills down his spine. He could feel its eyes, cold and patient, on his back. These were not the eyes of a mere animal, they were intelligent, calculating, filled with a malevolent purpose. The hunter's instincts screamed at him to run, to flee this place and never look back, but he knew that running would only make him more vulnerable. He had to face whatever it was, had to confront the darkness that had taken root in this forest. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent shivers down his spine. The forest was a symphony of subtle sounds, each one a potential harbinger of doom. The hunter's senses were on high alert, his every nerve ending tingling with anticipation. He moved cautiously, every step measured, every breath controlled, knowing that any mistake could be his last. The forest was a living entity, and it was testing him, probing his weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He knew the stories whispered by the firelight, tales of the cursed deer with eyes like burning embers. These were not just stories to scare children. They were warnings passed down through generations, a way to remember the dangers that lurked in the dark. The hunter had always dismissed them as mere superstition, the fanciful imaginings of those who did not understand the forest as he did. But now, in the heart of this ancient wood, he began to wonder if there was more truth to them than he had ever believed. He always dismissed them as folklore, mere superstition. He was wrong. The realization hit him like a physical blow, a sudden, jarring understanding that he was not the master of this place. The forest was alive, and it had a will of its own. The hunter was no longer the predator. He was the prey, and the forest was closing in around him. He could feel it, a tightening of the air, a closing of ranks, as if the very trees were conspiring against him. The hunter knew he had to act, and act quickly if he was to survive the night. Generations ago, a terrible act stained the forest floor with blood. It was a night shrouded in darkness, where the moon hid behind thick clouds, casting an ominous shadow over the land. The forest, usually a place of serene beauty and tranquility, was transformed into a scene of horror and despair. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to whisper secrets of the past, their leaves rustling with the weight of untold stories. The ground, once a bed of soft moss and fallen leaves, was now marred with the crimson stain of blood, a silent witness to the violence that had occurred. A proud stag, the guardian of the woods, was slain not for sustenance, but for sport. This majestic creature, with its antlers reaching towards the heavens, had roamed these woods for centuries, a symbol of strength and grace. It was revered by the forest's inhabitants, both human and animal, as a protector and a guide. But on that fateful night, a hunter, driven by arrogance and a desire for conquest, took aim and released an arrow. The stag, caught off guard, staggered and fell, its life force ebbing away with each passing moment. The forest mourned the loss of its guardian, the air thick with sorrow and anger. Its dying breath was a curse, a promise of vengeance that echoed through the trees. The forest remembered. The wind carried the stag's final anguished cry, a sound that resonated deep within the heart of the woods. The trees, ancient and wise, absorbed the curse, their roots intertwining with the very essence of the stag's spirit. The whispers of the forest grew louder, a constant reminder of the injustice that had been done. The once peaceful woods were now a place of foreboding, where the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. And the air was thick with an unspoken threat. The stag's spirit, twisted by pain and rage, festered in the heart of the woods. No longer the noble guardian it once was, the spirit had become a spectre of vengeance, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It roamed the forest, a ghostly presence that could be felt but rarely seen. The animals of the forest, once its companions, now cowered in fear, sensing the change in their former protector. The spirit's rage was palpable, a force that seemed to warp the very fabric of the forest, twisting the trees and casting eerie shadows that danced in the moonlight. It waited, biding its time for the curse to claim its due. The forest, now a place of dread, seemed to hold its breath as if anticipating the inevitable retribution. The spirit of the stag was patient, knowing that vengeance, like a seed, needed time to grow. It watched as the seasons changed, the leaves turning from green to gold to brown and the forest floor becoming a carpet of decay. The sense of waiting was almost tangible, a heavy presence that hung in the air, making the forest a place where few dared to venture. The descendants of the hunter would pay the price, their lineage haunted by the stag's spectral wrath. The curse was not just a fleeting moment of anger, but a binding promise that would span generations. The hunter's family, once proud and prosperous, began to feel the weight of the curse. Strange occurrences plagued them, shadows that moved on their own, whispers in the night, and the constant haunting presence of the stag's spirit. The forest, once a place of refuge and beauty, had become a symbol of their doom. The descendants knew that the only way to break the curse was to atone for the sins of their ancestor, but the path to redemption was shrouded in mystery and danger. He had sensed it first as a presence, a cold breath on the back of his neck. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement in the undergrowth, too swift to be a normal deer. Its eyes, twin points of malevolent fire, pierced the gloom. Fear, cold and sharp, cut through him. He knew with chilling certainty that he was the target of something ancient and evil. The hunt had begun, but he was not the predator, he was the prey. The deer was a grotesque mockery of nature. Its antlers, vast and twisted, were gnarled bone adorned with rotting leaves and clumps of moss. They seemed to scrape the sky, defying gravity and reason. Its coat, once majestic, was now a tapestry of decay. Patches of rotting flesh revealed bone beneath. A foul odor, the stench of death and decay, clung to the creature like a shroud. Blood on the leaves. The chase was relentless. The deer moved with unnatural speed, its hooves barely touching the ground. It left a trail of blood and viscera in its wake, a testament to its savage power. Trees were uprooted and tossed aside as if by a hurricane. The forest itself seemed to bend to the creature's rage. The hunter, his heart pounding in his chest, ran for his life. He knew with growing terror that he couldn't outrun his fate. Echoes of ancient curses, legends whispered of the creature, a being that lurked in the shadows of the ancient forest, waiting for the unwary traveler. The forest, shrouded in mist and mystery, was a place where few dared to tread after nightfall. The stories told of a dark, shadowy figure, a creature born of ancient curses and dark magic whose presence could be felt long before it was seen. The air would grow cold and an eerie silence would descend, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. It was said that those who encountered the creature were never the same again, their minds haunted by the terrifying visions they had witnessed. Ancient tales passed down through generations spoke of the vengeful spirit of the forest. Around campfires, elders would recount the chilling stories, their voices trembling with fear and reverence. They spoke of an old man who had once ventured into the heart of the forest, only to return with tales of ghostly figures and eerie drawings on ancient scrolls. These scrolls, covered in cryptic symbols and unsettling illustrations, were said to hold the secrets of the forest's dark past. The old man, his eyes wide with terror, would describe the haunted forest where ghostly figures roamed and the trees seemed to whisper secrets of long-forgotten curses. The Greeks feared Artemis, the wrathful goddess who could unleash her hounds on those who angered her. In ancient temples, bathed in eerie lighting, worshippers would offer sacrifices to appease her wrath. Artemis, depicted with her bow drawn, was a formidable figure, her eyes blazing with divine fury. Her hounds, fierce and relentless, were said to roam the misty forests, hunting down those who had incurred her displeasure. The stories of Artemis and her hounds were not just tales of divine retribution, but also warnings to those who dared to defy the natural order. The ancient Greeks believed that the forest was her domain, and to trespass it was to invite her wrath. The Celts spoke of the Cailleach, a hag-like deity who controlled the forces of nature and could summon storms with a flick of her wrist. In the dark, stormy forests where lightning split the sky and rain fell in torrents, the Cailleach was a figure of both fear and reverence. She was often depicted standing in ancient stone circles, her arms raised to the heavens as she summoned the fury of the elements. The Celts believed that the Cailleach could bend nature to her will, and her anger could bring about devastating storms and harsh winters. Her presence was a reminder of the raw, untamed power of nature, and the need to respect the ancient forces that govern their world. These stories, once dismissed as myths, now echoed in the hunter's mind, a terrifying chorus of warnings. As he walked through the dark forest, the whispers of ancient curses seemed to follow him, growing louder with each step. The shadows seemed to move, and he could feel eyes watching him from the darkness. The hunter, once a skeptic, now found himself gripped by fear, his heart pounding in his chest. The tales of vengeful spirits, wrathful goddesses, and storm-summoning hags were no longer just stories. They were a terrifying reality that he could not escape. The forest, with its eerie whispers and shadowy figures, had become a place of nightmares. He was living proof that some legends were rooted in terrifying truth. Clutching an ancient artifact, his hands trembling with fear, he realized that the stories of old were not just figments of imagination, but echoes of a dark past that still lingered in the present. The haunted look in his eyes spoke of the horrors he had witnessed, and the realization that he was not alone in the forest. The ancient curses, the vengeful spirits, and the wrathful deities were all too real, and they were watching, waiting for their next victim. The hunter's journey had become a descent into a world where myths and reality blurred, and the echoes of ancient curses were all too real. Days blurred into nights. Exhaustion gnawed at him, but the fear was a constant spur. The deer's cries echoed through the trees, a chilling symphony of rage and pain. He was being herded, driven deeper into the heart of the cursed woods. He stumbled, his legs heavy with fatigue. A low growl, guttural and filled with malice, sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't need to look to know the creature was close, its putrid breath hot on his neck. He collapsed at the foot of an ancient oak, its branches gnarled and twisted like the antlers of his pursuer. Despair washed over him. He was trapped, his strength failing. The deer stepped into a pool of moonlight. Its eyes, two burning embers, bored into him. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate. He could feel the creature's hot, fetid breath on his face, the stench of death and decay overwhelming. A scream tore through the night, echoing through the silent trees, chilling the air. It was a raw, primal sound filled with pain and terror, resonating deeply. The forest, so long silent, seemed to sigh in satisfaction. The ancient curse was fulfilled. The morning light, filtering through the canopy, revealed a scene of unspeakable horror. Only scattered bones and torn shreds of clothing remained, a gruesome testament to the beast's relentless vengeance. The forest held its secrets close. The scent of blood lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the ancient curse. The monstrous deer was gone, its hunger sated for now. But the forest remembered. The curse, born of betrayal and blood, would linger, a whispered threat to those who dared to hunt within its haunted depths. The cycle of vengeance, once begun, would continue. The hunter had become the hunted, and the forest would claim its